This is a Geek Leader. Hey guys, welcome to episode 177 of Geek Leader Podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda, and I want to invite you guys to attend the Women in Tech Conference on October 13th, 2020. It will be live streamed on Twitch thanks to COVID. We're going to be doing a lot more of these conferences live, but this one is all about women in tech. And you know, I've done a series in the past where I've had many female leaders in technology come on the show and talk about what it's been like for a woman in tech. And here we get to hear some of the leading women in tech talk about their experiences, talk about different technologies that they're using, and just show us how women across different roles can discuss data science, cloud development, work environments that they've had to deal with, and things that are moving the needle forward and making technology a more inclusive place. So learn, be inspired, connect with other women that are advancing the inclusion of the technology industry. And you can find all of this at geekleader.com/WIT, Women in Tech, geekleader.com/WIT. This is put together by Manning Publications. They're a sponsor and really appreciate them. So again, Women in Tech, you can go to geekleader.com/WIT, and that's October 13th, 2020. All right, Geek Leaders. Today on the show, I've got Alex Kuhn. He is the founder of Born to Lead, a leadership consultant. And Alex, I was watching your video that you made just recently talking about, how to build culture and things like that. And I thought that would be fantastic for some of the leaders on our show. So if you don't mind, just give the audience a little bit about how you got to where you are today and what are some of the things that you've been doing that might help our audience.
Sure, John. And I have to confess that I always tell people I'm obsessed with leadership. And so when I see the title of the podcast, Geek Leader, I was like, this is too good to be true. So first and foremost, thanks for having me on. But yeah, I like to keep it short and sweet and hit the highlights when it comes to my background. But, when it comes to how I got to where I am today and started and founded an organization called Born to Lead, everyone loves to talk about their stories of struggle and their stories of, how they overcame something. And I'm no different. When I got into the entrepreneurial world back in 2011, I had a very successful career as an athletic coach and as a head coach of an NCAA swim program. I was very successful then. And I wanted to just go on my own. And like every entrepreneur that seems to start the business, there was no easy way to get it going. First 3 years, I started a business, failed, started another business, failed, and started a third business, failed. And I just, you start to question, what is it about you? Like, are you the problem? Or is it that, listen, you have to sacrifice so much in your life to build this incredible organization, incredible business that you can't have a family, you can't have kids, because I know how important your family is to you. And I was, it was concerning to me. So around 2013, 2014, I went on one of those sabbaticals. I just kind of went out in the woods, and I remember just asking myself, why was I so successful as a professional in my career? Why was I able to, turn around these film programs and be successful in the corporate world, but I couldn't just master that same success in my entrepreneurial venture? And what I kind of realized was that I was doing so much of what everybody was telling me I should do, whether it was this internet marketing guru, or is this coach or that person who says, do PR, do marketing, do sales, do all these different things. And what I was missing was the fact is, like, what does my intuition say? What does my gut say? What am I great at? What are my innate skills? And you'll hear me talk a lot about success DNA, but I really made that decision to just say, screw it. I'm going to build this next business the way I believe it's going to work for me. It's going to work for my clients, it's going to work for my team. And ultimately, that's how I'm going to build this business. And, 5 years later, I've started and sold 2 of my own businesses. And I really want to bring this kind of leadership concept to, all entrepreneurs, all businesses out there, that at the end of the day, there's so much focus on analytics and so much focus on information that I think we are missing alignment and resonance and intuition. And these pieces you mentioned, where I believe culture, it's not just a fun word to say, or it's not just one of those words you like to throw out. I believe really that for most organizations, leadership and culture is really that invisible key that really can unlock that organization's potential. So that's how I've started today. And I've been very grateful and fortunate to work with so many heart-led, impact-driven entrepreneurs around the world, helping them show this new idea of leadership, how they implement it into their company so that they can reach their own successes and their own visions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things I liked about you when I was reading about you is that, you talk about how family's first. And I think that's a really important thing that, some businesses say that, but to actually show that is a different thing. And that's one of the things that I think is important when it comes to building a culture, is to let your team and everybody know that family is first,
Mhm.
and not just say that, but also show that.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, my team here, they all have kids, they all have families. And one of the things I always, talk to my organization, even a lot of the clients, the same thing is that, listen, if you want somebody to help your dreams come true, if you want somebody to actually help you build your business or build your organization or really work for you, are you doing what is necessary to help make sure that their dreams come true? What's important in their life? Do you actually really know that down to the nitty gritty, to the point where maybe there's times that, the typical corporate structure and the corporate environment is not going to work for that person in achieving their goals and dreams? And so I couldn't agree more with you, John. I mean, for me, my 19-month-old son, my amazing, beautiful wife, they come first. They always come first, as I know your family does as well for you. So at the end
Mhm.
of the day, if you're not building an organization and culture that matches that vision, not only for yourself, but the people that are going to be in it, then you're right. It's all fool's gold when all said and done.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I don't know, family's the one thing that's going to stay with you, right? You talked about how you built a business and sold it, whatever. You move on, but your family stays no matter
Exactly.
what.
Exactly. Couldn't agree more.
So one of the things that you talk about is setting up goals, right? And if you're trying to have a family first culture, you're trying to build that correct culture and make sure your team around you is always there. What are some things that we need to think about when it comes to goal setting, and what's the importance of that for building a successful business?
Well, it's funny because it's such a great question, because so many organizations talk about goals, and obviously one of the common business acronyms is KPIs. What are your key
Yep.
performance indicators? And if you really look at it, so many organizations talk about revenue and profits and losses and expenses, and those seem to be the common KPIs that the organization does, hence where the goals come from. So a lot of times when I look at the client, I look at their organization, and why they're struggling is they may look at these goals and say, these goals are important to us. These goals are incredible to us. We need to hit these goals. But when you actually dive deeper into what matters to that founder, what matters to that leader, what matters to that organization, it goes deeper than goals, right? It goes to this vision, or sometimes I even use the word paradigm. This idea of what is this going to actually look like? Forget the numbers, forget the goals, forget the actual sequence of what you need to hit today. But what do you want this entire life of this business to look like for yourself, for your team, for others? And what comes out so often is much more exciting, much more enticing, and much more motivating to the individual, because at the end of the day, the vision is very unique. It's very different. It's very specific to what matters to them and what matters to the people they want within their organizations. So once they actually have that built up, then you can start actually figuring out what metrics matter. So I'll even use my organization as an example. So a lot of organizations that are in the coaching and training organization will use just number of clients. They'll say, how many clients are you working with? How many clients are you looking at? Well, we don't really look at that number. The number that I look at for me specifically is lifetime value of our clients, meaning that our objective isn't just to sign up everybody. Our objective is to work with every single person that joins our organization for at least 3 years. That's a very important number for us because, as you said, John, very well,
Mhm.
family is important to me. So when a client comes into our organization, they're treated like family. We care about them. We know that we're going to do everything possible, both within our scope and sometimes outside of our scope, to help them succeed as clients. And so, as you talked about, family is very important. That culture of family, not just within my organization, but also with the clients, is important. So as a result, we come up with a different KPI that most people may not even look at, but we look at it very differently. So to
Yeah.
me, goals need to start with the vision first.
So what is a good vision? I know I've heard people talk about vision, something that you can see, something that is tangible. What would you say a vision would be?
A vision to me, it always kind of starts with the idea of using your five senses. What
Mhm.
can you see? What can you touch? What can you taste? What can you smell? Right? Using those senses to actually be able to build something that is worthwhile to you. A lot of times when we think about this idea of vision, it's one thing that saying, listen, this is what my organization and what matters to me. But when you actually start asking people questions like, what matters to you? What does your lifestyle look like, right? When you have, like yourself, right? When you have three
Mhm.
kids, or when you have a kid like me, it's not just about building this incredible organization, but it's building an incredible organization that is also family friendly, both for the clients, both for the team, and as well for you. So it's really a question of like where you are and what you see as your lifestyle, what you see important to you. So much of vision has nothing to do with numbers. So much of it is not even just about, I want to hit a New York Times bestselling book, or I want to hit a $10 million organization, because most people don't even know what that is. They have no idea what that means to them when they haven't hit it. But what does mean to them is, listen, I want an organization that's going to help my family be comfortable, never have to worry, financially free, allows me to work on a schedule that maybe isn't full time. Maybe it gives me so many weeks off a year. People can start to conceptualize that. And when you can start to conceptualize that, then ultimately, I use this psychology term a lot, is Parkinson's Law. When
Hmm.
you understand what you want your lifestyle to work within the business and what that vision looks like, then you ultimately start to put boundaries and parameters on what matters to you. So instead of working 16 hours a day because I want to hit a certain number, you start to say, listen, how can I build this vision within the time scope, within the time frame? And as a result, you start to work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, I think I first heard about Parkinson's Law when it was from Tim Ferriss. I think he was talking about how like the scope of your work is going to expand to the time that you allow for it,
Mhm.
which, you think about it, if you tell someone they have to work, this is a 2 week project, then guess how long it's going to take? 2 weeks, right? But if you
Mhm.
tell someone like the goal is to get this done, they might surprise you and get it done in a day.
100% every time, every time. And the funny thing is that, it's the same thing you see with a lot of the clients. They're like, oh, for me to hit this number, it must take me 5 years.
Hmm.
Or, and some, listen, we can't just like say, listen, you're going to build $1 million business in a matter of 2 days. I mean, there's also got to be some, understanding of the real world a little bit at the same time. But more often than not, when it comes to the numbers, they don't matter much to people. What
Right.
matters to the person is at the end of the day, what they want their vision in life to look like. Because so many times, and Tim Ferriss has talked about this, I know, in his many books, right? He built this business and he worked his butt off and he worked his tail off and he got to a certain number. But at the end of the day, he wasn't happy. He was not happy in the business. He was not happy where they were. He was not happy with his lifestyle. And it's one of the reasons why time and time again, even so many leaders in life, whether they're starting their business today and they've never run their business themselves, or clients that are doing multi-million dollars to $1 billion themselves, right? You still got to go back to the basics. And just like an athlete, I remember hearing a story about Kobe Bryant was working on his dribbling an hour a day even at the end of his career, right? At some basic level, there is basics in the business. And I really believe, as we've talked about, culture and vision, this isn't just a document you throw out one time and use it as an onboarding process. This is something that you continue to cultivate, continue to read, continue to grow day after day.
Hmm. Absolutely. And so what are some advice that you would have from, let's say, a relatively new manager or leader that is just now trying to figure out, like, maybe they're a little overwhelmed, right? Because you're newly managing someone, you feel like you still have work to do, but you also have to figure out how to lead people instead of writing code. And you hear people say, well, you got to build a good culture with your team. You don't even know what culture is. You don't
Mhm.
know how to move around. You feel like you're overwhelmed. What are some things that you can do just right out of the gate to build that successful team moving forward, and maybe to understand that it's not something you have to do right now. It's something you have to build to. You don't automatically become the superstar leader. You've got to take steps to get there. What are some things that someone can do?
Well, and I think this is important too, John, because it's so valuable. Because even if you're starting out and there's so many things that can overwhelm you, especially when you're running your own team or really the wheels moving. It's not like
Hmm.
people probably listening here. There's might be some people that are just about to start out, but a lot of people have the wheels moving. It's
Right.
going. It's like, wow, what do I do? Like, what do I do? And this is something that is actually going to be a little bit of a contradictory, where I think you'll hear many leadership experts or coaches or people talk about. But I believe there's actually only three real important pieces when it comes to culture. And I think the rest of the stuff is fluff. But if
Okay.
we focus on these three things time and time again, what you'll realize is that if these become integral conversations with yourself, with your team, if you put a little time in it every single week, you ultimately notice how it actually starts to gel the organization together, gel the team together, gel the actual growth of the company. And those three things are vision, tribe, and philosophy. Meaning, what is the actual tangible vision? Not the mission statement, not the purpose, not the why, but what is actually the vision? What are we tangibly working towards as an organization? The second is the tribe. And what I mean by that is not about like what the avatar or what the demographics of the organization, but really what are the psychological pieces or identity of the people that are in an organization. I was just working with an individual. He's a manager of a sales team, and they were talking about, what about their sales team do they really want to identify themselves with? And they want to be the sales organization that basically makes sure that they answer every single question for the client or prospective client before they even have a chance to buy. Basically, they want to make sure that they become the top resource for that prospect, right? So they start to identify themselves in that situation. So when we talk about tribe, we're not just talking about we're hardworking or we're compassionate or we're these values. What you're really saying is here's how we identify the self because it gets displayed into our work. And then the third thing is philosophy. And philosophy really goes down to what is the one thing that you and your team are going to be great at. And typically these are things that aren't talent. These aren't things that like literally take a specific skill, but they are things that are so important to you. And the most common example I think of is Zappos and customer service, where if anybody called with any single problem, any single situation, even if it had nothing to do with shoes, they're going to answer. They're going to find the answer for that person, regardless if they make a single dollar with it or not. As a leader and as a leader of a team, my advice to you is just start with those three and take 15 minutes every week just to say, well, what's the vision today? What's the identity of our organization, the people in it, or our tribe? And then the third is, as a philosophy, what do we want to be better at than anyone else in any other industry, in any other organization that we're competing with?
I think that's really good advice. And I know when I look back at, just building a team, you can do that with everything on your team. And one of the things that I did with my team is to create what I call our team code. It's kind of like how we're gonna identify ourselves. What are going to be the answers to simple things like for example, one of the items of our code is we have each other's back. We're going to always, be there for one another. We're not going to throw people under the bus, right?
Mhm.
Another one is that we make life simple. So instead of things being complicated, we're going to try to express everything we do in the simplest terms possible. We're going to make life easy for those around us. We're not going to make things difficult. So those are kind of like our philosophy and our life and vision that we're going to put together as a team. I think that's really good because sometimes you're running a team, you're just trying to, get the next project out the door and you don't even know what your end goal is. And I think having that philosophy really is helpful for people to understand what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I love those, John. Those are really good, by the way. I mean, especially too, because those are things that people can actually grab a hold of and really harness and work on every day, right? Sometimes, listen, let's be clear, right? Every goal we set is not going to be achieved. And if every single goal we set out is achieved, then what it means we're probably setting goals that are too low. But the things you talked about are things that you can work on day in and day out. I love those. Those are great.
Yeah, I think they're more like things that are, there is no, completing them. They're just a direction to go. It's almost like they're,
Mhm.
you say go north, right? Well, how far north? Well, as far as you can go, right? You just keep going.
It reminds me of this quote from Muhammad Ali. I guess he was like in front of a reporter, and the reporter said, "How many sit-ups are you going to do?" And he says, "I don't start counting my sit-ups until they hurt." Right? And it does kind of talk about that as an organization. Where is this? I mean, it goes back to the book "Good the Great,"
Mhm.
where the idea is that listen, if you have a real just set, this is like the goal. And once you hit it, there's like a little bit of emotional, like, we finally did it. Okay, we can breathe, we can relax. And not that there's any wrong with taking a break, but I do believe sometimes when you don't have something that is very long term, very high, that's going to take a long time to achieve, chances are you're actually setting your organization to really kind of go through some major highs and lows. So
Mhm.
I love what you're talking about, John.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what are some things that you've seen kind of with some of your consultants, some big wins that you've been able to help people get through, like that we can probably also maybe steal, we can also use with our teams as well, that you've seen work time and time again.
Oh, I love this question. Yeah, a lot of times it's amazing what you can learn from others. I mean, and I think it comes back to like different people. I know there's a lot of people that are in the IT industry, and ironically, John, I've had quite a few clients that have done very successful in this the IT industry, because I think it's a very competitive industry because
Mhm.
there's so many people that can just literally get into it overnight and start their business the next day. So, what are some things that we found that have actually really helped? So, one of my clients I can think of, his name's Jason. And when he started, he was kind of basically going from somebody who was working for an IT company and started his own IT company. And within about 2 years, he went from obviously starting his business to I think $2 or $3 million in revenue, and I think it was like 50 or 60,000 MRR. So he had a lot of great success. So what were some of the keys for him? Well, one of the things that we found with Jason time and time again there is that as the IT leader of his organization, it was natural for him to just basically be very descriptive.
Mhm.
So simple to say, okay, here's this system, here's the process, here's the step. That was his strength. But what he realized that he wasn't good at was the sales. He was never really good at himself, or unless he already had the client, and he was great at the accounts receivable side. But what he realized is he needed to look at what his talents were. And sometimes I talk about success DNA, but Jason was a natural architect. That was his leadership style. It was great for him. And what he really needed, in the words we use, is called a motivator. Somebody who has that innate genius and innate ability to get people to say yes. And we're not talking about a rah-rah guy. We're literally talking about somebody who just has that natural ability and natural way to get people to buy into the product, to buy into the organization, buy into the vision. And so seeing him actually bring on not only team members that kind of complement his skill set, but also ultimately bringing in partners, that was integral to him. So that's one example of somebody and really truly understand your own leadership. Another example is Andrew, and he runs a business here in Pittsburgh, and they're doing fantastic as well. And one of the things that, he was the guy that I think this is also, I think, important. I think most IT people talk about this, but, it's the question of not just having the right business systems or not having the right, products in line, but what do you feel like you really can excel in? There's so many examples and different, we'll call it deliverables in IT. You can sell this, you could do that, you could go here. I mean, you could go so many different directions. And with Andrew, because he loved tech, he just loved it. He wanted to do everything. He wanted to have every single deliverable and every single line for every single consumer, etc. But at the end of the day, there is a pocket. There is a pocket where it's easier for you to understand the client's needs. It's easier for you to deliver. And the more that you can hone down on what you want to be great at, particularly in the deliverable side, the easier it is going to be to market. It's easier to find your own team. It's easier for you to control and manage the expectations for both your clients and yourself. And ultimately, it's going to make it easier for you to actually grow to a level where ultimately, when you want to bring in another deliverable or another product line, you can actually hire people that are maybe more specific or more talented or have experience for that. So those are two things that I find time and time again that leaders either A, they tend to not complement their own strength with somebody else that has them, and or B, they try to do too much too soon when they're just starting out.
Yeah, I think I've seen several people try to do too much too soon. They don't, it's challenging sometimes to delegate, right? It's challenging to have someone else do the task that you feel like you can do better than anybody else. But I always tell people you don't scale. One person doesn't scale. If you want to scale a business, you have to be able to delegate. And if you don't know how to delegate, what do you do? So what are some advice that you have as someone that maybe has challenging letting go?
Oh man. I mean, what's funny is I don't know if I've ever actually met a person who didn't have trouble delegating or letting go. I think it's just the most common challenge for most people that kind of get into this, entrepreneurial world or start their own business. So the first thing I ask them is what we just start to figure out first and foremost, why are you worried about delegating? Do you have a money issue? Do you have an expense issue? Are these really rational things? Or are these challenging you to grow as a leader? And the reality is 99 out of 100 times, and honestly, usually those every other exception, it's just like, listen, you do not have the funds right now to do this. So which means you have to really scale down your business to something so simple that you can do on your own until you get that revenue mark to a level where you can start bringing in. But generally, when people are at that point where they have the expenses or have the necessary pieces to actually be able to scale technology, people's wise, it's a question of their challenge. And sometimes often it comes down to control. Why is it that you feel like you have to control every single part? And the answer quite simply is it's either a lack of trust in themselves or a lack of trust in others. So working on those trust exercises and really starting to focus on how do you develop other leaders that you bring in, as opposed to bringing in and trying to develop employees. And as you're in a growing organization, the thing I tell people is, listen, you don't want task managers. You don't want people that you have to always deliver a task and say, get it done. What you're really trying to attract are leaders, people that you can say, hey, this is the result we are going to try to achieve in this area. You are in charge of that. And especially for growing organizations, whether you're under 7 figures or under 8 figures, I see this honestly usually before you have like a team of 100 people. But generally speaking, you're trying to find people that are leaders, that are take charge types, that are really focused on a result as opposed to saying, okay, what do I have to do next?
So you were a pretty successful swimmer, and you had a goal that you didn't quite achieve. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe how that has propelled you forward and been a positive in your life?
At the time, it did not feel like a positive. I think that's the best thing that we always think about is like when we talk about these lessons and these failures. And for me, I wanted to make the Olympics. I mean, and you meet me, I do not have the swimmer's build or the swimmer's height, but I was purely that technical, hardworking person. I was that quote unquote gym rat that was
Hmm.
willing to do anything and everything I could. And I didn't make it. And obviously it devastated me. I mean, it really, truly, I always tell people, listen, actually almost devastated me so much that, from a career path perspective, I think I felt I still had some unfinished business in this swim world, which is why one of the reasons why I actually became a swim coach. It's one of the reasons I decided, said, I'm going to become a college coach instead of, going into the corporate. I had an offer from Nike at the time, to go work for them in their marketing department when I was graduating college. But the way I look back on it at the end of my life was that, listen, because of that experience as a swimmer, traveling all over the world, competing against so many people, there's a couple skills that I've seen have been very valuable in my life here. So first and foremost, because I was always just a hard worker, I think
Hmm.
as coaches naturally always gravitated towards me to explain sets to new swimmers or to look at another swimmer's technique or to try to use any sort of motivational skills. And obviously, going into the college coaching world, I got the chance to work on those time and time again, recruiting people from different countries, different backgrounds, the rich, the poor, however it is. I had an ability to really focus on talking with a variety of people. So I think that's been a very important skill for me moving forward. The second skill, which I think obviously we talked about culture, is that because I actually worked with a variety of teams, so many people, especially in athletics, and I see this in the business so often, they have their system or they have their idea or they come in basically just locked in and said, this is how we are going to run our organization, or this is how we're going to build our team, or this is what we're going to sell, or we're going to only do it this way. Well, listen, I don't know about you, but people are people and they literally have their own free will of thinking. And I've never found any organization I've taken over, whether it was a coach or myself as a client or any individual, that didn't have their own thoughts and their own mindset and their own beliefs and their own way of doing things. So when I go into any situation, whether it was the two businesses I started and sold, whether it's
Hmm.
born a lead or obviously being a coach, I was a coach of an all women's swim team. I was a coach of one of the top teams in the country, in a very competitive environment. The idea is, how are you going to build an organization that works within that environment as opposed to trying to say, this is how I'm going to do it and it's my way or the highway. I found that doesn't work time and time again. So I think it's allowed me to continue to stay adaptable when the word is out there. And I think many times is there's only one way to do things. There's only one way to be. There's only one way to lead. And that's my hope, is that most business leaders understand that, listen, you can be running an IT business and 15 of you can run it 15 different ways and be very successful because you found something that works for you. You found something that works with your specific clients, and you found something that works with your specific team and your geographic area, whatever. But I think those are the things that have really been helpful for me.
Yeah, I think that's a really good answer because understanding that everybody has their own mind, and everybody thinks things a little bit differently, and that sometimes you need to realize that the way that you think is the only way possible, that there are other ways. And for me, I know we go back to delegation. That was one of the things that helped me learn to delegate to people, was because I realized that I may tell someone this is the way to do it, this is the best way to do it, but then they surprise you and they do it a different way. They come in through the back door instead of the front door, and it works out much better. And you don't realize that sometimes as a leader until you let go and actually have someone do that. But the surprise that you get for doing that is really, a huge benefit in my opinion.
It reminds me of an example actually that we do as a team, and it's something that I always tell every single one of my clients, is that when you have a team, that your job is not to build set in stone trains, but to have a capture training zone. And really simply is that when you find a system or find a process or find a way of doing work, that whoever built it, whether it was you or somebody else, captures on video, captures it in the moment. I just found that that works so much better than trying to write down systems and processes. But the idea simply is this: is that, listen, this doesn't mean it's set in stone. It just means that's how we are doing it today. And if you're taking it over, and if that's your job, listen, you can come in. We have the trainings here, and this is how we do it. But if you find a better way, something that's working, something that really is going to improve the speed, improve the process, improve the revenue, whatever that looks like. We
Mhm.
want that. We want an improvement, growth minded process and organization. That's why I talk about time and time again with these leaders. I think you're so spot on, John, with that. It's just, are we going to be set in our ways? And this is how it is, and either take it or leave it? Or are we going to continue to allow our teams and allow our clients and allow the people to show us maybe there's a better way of doing things? I mean, that's the definition of growth to me?
Yeah, absolutely. So when are you writing your book, man? You got to write a book.
It's coming out. Yes, it's going to be Success DNA, man. So we're going to be talking about, because I think one of the reasons that my my big belief with a lot of, this entrepreneur community, I
Mhm.
love everybody. I mean, John, I know you probably got, I mean, isn't this like one of the best communities of people? I mean, seriously, it's an incredible community. And it just, I don't know how to say it. It breaks my heart every single time where you hear the numbers. I mean, it's like over 90%, fail and don't make it. And, for whatever reason, right? I mean, there's a lot of reasons. I'm not saying that I have the exact answer. I'm not here sitting saying I'm the messiah for the entrepreneurial world. But one of the reasons I see that, and I use this analogy in questions with, when I go to a training or the first time I meet with a leader or an organization. And the question is this, is that if you saw a fish trying to fly,
Mhm.
is the fish's problem a mindset issue? Or is it a tactical issue? Or is it a hustle or grind issue? And we all know the answer is no. There's no way. We know the fish is meant to swim. And that's one of the reasons I see so many organizations, specifically leaders, break before the organization has a start, because they're running the organization as if they are a fish and they're trying to make it fly when they're really trying to make it swim. And that's why I talk about success DNA, is that, listen, if you actually understand your own innate strengths, innate talents, and unique things, and what you need to complement around you ultimately, but it's got to start with you as the leader. The business has to be an organism that starts with you first, because if you break, then there's no chance, there's no way that organization will survive. So that's, to me, the book that's coming out here, hopefully in the next 3 to 6 months.
Awesome, man. I can't wait to have you back on and talk more about that whenever it comes out and I can get a copy of it. I mean, I can just tell by your energy and all that you have in you that you definitely have something you need to put out there for the world.
Appreciate it, man. I really appreciate that a lot.
So how can people find out more about the things that you're working on, your coaching, and get in touch with you?
Yeah, thanks, John. I'm the type of guy that tries to be accessible. Even though we have about 20,000 leaders on our email list, and we have clients all over the world. But I like to keep, my success DNA is I'm on the people side.
Mhm.
So I built the business so that my incredible team of, Kims and Susans of the world really allow me to just get on, a podcast like this, John, and help those leaders. So the best way for people to get a hold of me is, I always say there's two ways. You can always go to my website at Alex-Kuhn. I know my last name is the fun one to spell. It's Kuhn. It's alex-kuhn.com. And you can always sign up for our leadership letters there. We talk about being born leaders and how you are born to lead. And also for me, from a social media perspective, I'm on Instagram. If you just type in Alex Kuhn, again, that's Kuhn, go ahead, follow me. And anybody that personally messages me, let me know that you heard me on this show. We'll send you actually a free $500 course, because I just want to make sure that, it doesn't matter if you ever pay me $1 or not. I just want to see business leaders like you that are listening to this episode out there succeed. And I know just a couple degrees shift in how you actually are operating an organization, how you're operating your team, could be tremendously game changing for all of you.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, man, I really appreciate having you on. I enjoyed the conversation. I feel like I've gotten a lot out of it. I'm sure our guests have too. Thanks so much. And I'll link all that up in the show notes as well, so people can find you there at geekleader.com. And have a good day.
Thank you. Appreciate it, John.
I hope you guys enjoyed that powerful conversation that we just had. And please share this episode with a friend. And, don't forget, you can make a difference, and hopefully you'll learn something like I did. And also, don't forget that October 13th, 2020 is the Women in Tech Conference sponsored by Manning. You can find out more about that by going to geekleader.com/WIT. And that's the Women in Tech Conference, October 13th, 2020. It will be live streamed on Twitch. Again, at geekleader.com/WIT.